You may remember the incident. Aaron Barshak, who describes himself as a comedy terrorist, two words I never thought I'd find in the same sentence, breached security at Windsor Castle and made his way into a party that was being held for Prince William. For a few days, it made headline news. Security had failed. It was the ultimate party gate crash. I guess none of us really like uninvited guests. This wasn't the first time there had been such an incident. Back in the 1980s, Michael Fagan had broken into Buckingham Palace. He made his way into the Queen's bedroom and she woke up to find him having a cigarette at the foot of her bed. I don't think she was amused. Why is it that incidents like this make such headline news? Well, there's the obvious security issue, but it's more than that. Whether it's the royal family or the family next door, all of us like to choose our guests. If Aaron Barshak or Michael Fagan had received invitations, then fair enough, but they hadn't. They initiated the encounter, and they weren't welcome. Now, hold those incidents in your mind just for a few moments. Nobody should be surprised that Christians believe that God exists. In fact, over 70% of the world's population believe in some sort of divine being. You may or may not be a God believer, or possibly you're agnostic, you just don't know. But my point is this: belief in God is not an unusual position. However, Christians believe not only that God exists, but that God is knowable. In other words, the Christian stance is, it's not just knowing about God, that's information. It's knowing God, and that's relationship. Now that is quite a claim. For a human being to say, I know God, is a little like gate-crashing the party. But if God has taken the initiative and issues the invitation and says, I want to know you, well then that's another story. And that's the Christian story. God isn't playing some sort of cosmic hide and seek. He has made himself both known and knowable in his Son, Jesus Christ. Now, Jesus Christ is a subject of later sessions, but it's very difficult for Christians to talk about God without very quickly talking about Jesus Christ. The Bible puts it this way: Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. But we'll put the subject of Jesus Christ on one side just for a while. Here's a quotation from a man called A.W. Tozer. What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. This isn't a question, it's a statement. That which comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. What Tozer is saying is that our concept of God will fundamentally influence how we think and how we behave. You'll be able to discuss this more in just a few moments, but let me expand on the idea. You see, if your concept of God is that he's some sort of celestial Father Christmas, big, fat, cuddly, and always generous, overlooking the bad that we do, then because God is fundamentally nice, then all will be okay in the end. If, on the other hand, our view of God is that he's some sort of demon head master, ready to condemn and punish every misdemeanor, we can live our lives under a terrible cloud, bound by guilt, constantly feeling inadequate, plagued by a sense of never really being quite good enough. You see, our view of God affects the way we live. But God doesn't want us to be in the dark about his existence or his character. I'm going to read from the Gospel of John, which I hope you have with you. You may like to follow the reading, so pause the DVD as you find John chapter 4 verses 21 to 24. Then restart the DVD when you're ready. This is a record of an encounter that Jesus had with a woman who had an inadequate understanding of God. We'll start reading at the end of the conversation. So this is John chapter 4 and verse 21. Jesus said to her, "Believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshippers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the Spirit and in truth." Jesus uses two names or descriptions of God which I believe begin to shed some light onto what God is like. In verses 21 and 23, God is described as Father, and in verse 24, God is described as Spirit. When you go into your discussion time, I'd like you to consider these descriptions. Are they helpful? What do they mean to you? To me, the title Father is something I can understand. It means loving, it means caring, it's something I can get my mind around. The description Spirit, however, means that God is very different from anything else I know. What do they mean to you? So, God. If he does exist, if there is anyone there, what is he like? This is the subject for your discussion. Why not start with that quotation I gave you a few moments ago? What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us.